I'd like you to consider releasing your letters.
To a newspaper?
Maybe a book. People need to read your story for themselves. And it'll put pressure on the government to give us a court date.
I'm ready for that.
Would you like me to step outside?
Yeah. Keep going.
You don't want to pray?
Are you religious? No. Why do you care?
I don't. I care about you.
And that was a clip from The Mauritanian, the new film by Kevin MacDonald, which is out on April the 2nd. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Taha Rahim, and Jodie Foster, I'm delighted to say, joins us now. Hello, good afternoon to you, Jodie.
Hey there. How are you guys doing over there?
Oh, doing okay. Where are you over there?
I am in Los Angeles and I'm staring at a palm tree as we speak.
Okay.
Actually, 3 palm trees.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's very nice to spend some time with you. You came on the show a few years back, just after Money Monster. And we talked then, which you won't remember, obviously, but I remember because I remember it's the only interview for this show that I've done, which was all about algorithms.
Oh, boy.
And because it's a very important thing in Money Monsters, George Clooney, Julia Roberts movie. And since then, algorithms seem to have become a very big deal. You kind of started the whole thing, I think.
Yeah, it was, that movie a little bit came before its time, I'd say, in a lot of ways,
Yes.
because it really was about the populist movement, about, people standing up and saying, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore in America, not really 100% understanding what their grievances were about. So that movie did come a little bit before its time.
Maybe it's time for it to come out again, or for it to be reconsidered. Anyway, that's a few years ago. Anyway, every time algorithms come up, I think Jodie Foster explained an algorithm to me, and I really should understand.
I'm not sure I could explain it to you today.
Okay.
Yeah, it flew right out of my mind.
Kevin MacDonald was on the show a few weeks ago, and we talked about a bunch of stuff, but obviously the Mauritanian was one of the things he wanted to talk about the most. Can we start at the beginning? Sure. You play Nancy Hollander. Can you explain who she is and who the Mauritanian is as well?
Okay. Well, it's taken from a true story. Mohamedou Old Slahi was abducted from his home in Mauritania right after 9/11. He was taken to a bunch of different countries, put in a plane, blindfolded, mittens on, phones over his ears. Finally, he ended up in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and the United States government held him there for 15 years without ever charging him. They never told him what he did. They tortured him physically, psychologically, sexually. Managed to get out a forced confession where he confessed to virtually anything they asked him to confess to, including the murder of JFK. It didn't matter. And his lawyer, he finally got a lawyer, an American lawyer, who defended him through the habeas corpus laws of the Constitution. And I'm not sure I said that right because I'm not really a lawyer. I only played one in a film.
That worked for me.
He managed to be released. Was released by a judge, and then unfortunately Obama kept him in another 5 years for no reason. But he was released eventually, and this is his story. Nancy Hollander, who I play, is this very cool hero of a defense attorney. She's been fighting for social justice and defending some very, questionable people for her entire career as a lawyer. And she sees that as her mission. Everybody deserves a defense. And at first, I think that she assumed that he might be guilty. And then as time went on, she understood that he wasn't.
What was it about this story, which is a compelling story, the way you've just told it, that lured you in, Jodie? Because a movie has to be something special to stir the interest, I think.
Yeah, well, first of all, as an American, having lived through 9/11, it was strange to me that I knew nothing about Guantanamo, absolutely nothing about Guantanamo Bay. I vaguely knew that it was still open, that Obama had said he was going to close it, but he hadn't. And then I read the script and read the book and was just blown away by Mohamedou's story. So my entire motivation for making the movie was just to serve Mohamedou's story. The real Mohamedou Ould Slahi is just an amazing guy. He managed to live through fear and terror at the hands of the US government. And they didn't break his humanity. He's forgiving, loving, affectionate, joyful, happy, faithful, twinkly guy. And I wanted to know him and understand him, and I wanted, Americans, and by extension, everybody in the world who sees films, I wanted them to live through his experience.
And that's exactly the way Tahir Rahim plays it, with all of those qualities, but still, I mean, a twinkle, it sounds naff, doesn't it? But actually, his spirit must be something that's very difficult to capture on camera, but he absolutely nails that.
Well, yeah. And, they were not able to break that from him, no matter how hard they tried. And they have been able to break other people. But I think that's what makes Mohamedou such an extraordinary story.
Is it true you hadn't played a real person in a movie before?
I've only played a real person once, which was Anna Leon Owens of Anne and the King, but she'd been dead for 250 years. So I'm not sure that actually counted.
It's amazing that you've been doing movies all this time. And that time when you met Nancy Hollander and you met the person that you're playing, that seems quite a moment then. What was that like? What did she tell you? How did that influence the way you decided to play her?
Yeah, well, I think she knew, I told her, look, I've never played a real character because I sometimes feel restricted by playing a real character. And often the screenplays that are biopics or that are political movies based on real events, they don't care about story and structure and character. And so I really told her that even though I would honor very much, what she looked like, and certainly I wanted to honor her being, there are some licenses that I want to take, and I didn't want it to just be an imitation of her. So yes, I wear bright red lipstick just like she does, and bright red nail polish, and there's a lot about her that is just like Nancy, the real Nancy. But my Nancy is a bit meaner than her Nancy in the beginning. I wanted to give her a kind of an edge, maybe exaggerate her edge, so that I could see how her relationship with Mohamedou actually managed to change her over time.
And did you meet Mohamedou?
Oh yeah, Mohamedou was able to. I mean, it's sort of divine inspiration. He isn't able to travel anywhere in the world. He can't get a visa anywhere, even though he has never been charged with anything, and he's never been charged with any kind of crime. The U.S. government keeps intervening and not letting him go anywhere. But he did manage to get a visa to go to Cape Town, South Africa. So we were very lucky. He showed up. Nancy came as well. The two of them got to go visit the penguins and go see Robben Island, where Mandela had been incarcerated. And we had a lot of dinners together, and they would tease each other. And it was really like bringing family members together. It was a wonderful experience.
And was quoting some lines from one of your movies, I understand.
Yes, the only movie of mine that he'd ever seen was Maverick. And which is kind of funny, because when they told him that I was going to play Nancy Hollander, he just thought that was the craziest thing, that, this kind of like bleach blonde Southern Belle, funny Southern Belle was going to play Nancy Hollander. And he'd seen it many times while he was in prison. So he, I don't know if you know this, but the guards, towards the end of his prison stay, the last 5 or 6 years, he could watch movies with the guards. And so they watched he loves American movies, and they watched a lot of American movies together. The Big Lebowski, he's seen like 86 times. But Maverick also was one of them.
Can I ask you about, I wasn't quite sure how much to say about it, but given that you've told us the story, and you've told us kind of how the story unfolds, but their ears would have pricked up, I think, when you said that he spent 14, 15 years in Guantanamo. A US judge had said he should be freed, but the Obama administration kept him in for 6 years?
Five years.
Why? And what was the justification for that? And I imagine that, people who would have supported the Obama government and administration naturally would be going, hang on, this feels wrong.
Yeah, there was no justification for it. They just kept appealing and appealing, even though they knew they had no evidence, and even though they knew that they were going to lose every single time. But they just kept doing it because I don't know why. I mean, you'd have to ask Obama, but I think it had to do with pressure from the right-wing side of the Congress. And, they had let quite a few other people go, certainly, but all of those people had just admitted they were guilty, even whether they did or not, whether they were guilty or not, they just admitted they were guilty. And Mohamedou refused to admit that he was guilty to something he wasn't guilty of. But I do think that the reason that they finally did let him go when they did was because the book was a bestseller. So it really was the book that got him out. And you have to remember, the book became a bestseller, even though it was almost entirely redacted, meaning almost all the pages were black. That's quite a feat to get a book to be a bestseller when, the book is almost entirely redacted.
Do you have any sense how this movie will play in the USA today?
I don't really know. I mean, there's a part of me that's, I can't say I don't care, but I know that
I wondered if you were going to say that.
It doesn't really matter, is the truth. We make movies because they're good and because they're right and because they fascinate us and they need to be told. And I always believe that's a good recipe for connecting with people, because if I feel that way, then they'll feel that way too. But you never know. It's a weird time right now because the cinemas are closed down, but people are viewing movies that they may not have found any other way. So hopefully this film will change some minds. I mean, we do hope that Guantanamo will close eventually. I think it will eventually, whether it's under the Biden administration or other administration.
I did want to ask you, just as you've touched on cinema, people watching movies, when we spoke last time, we talked about how you were directing this big movie, but you're very happy directing for the small screen, House of Cards,
Yep.
Black Mirror, Tales from the Coop, and you seem to be very happy doing that. And I wonder if one of the kind of the side effects of what we've been through the last year is that some bits of cinema will struggle because people will be very happy consuming movies maybe like this on their TV in the front room.
Yeah, and look, we all knew this was coming. Anybody who's in the movie business knew this was coming in the last 15 years. We've been saying that there is a bifurcation between movies for cinema, theatrical movies, and movies that are on home screens. And that eventually all narrative movies with any real character or psychological depth, all of those films will be sent on your home screen, and only big franchise films and superhero films will be on the major screens, but theatrical screens where you pay a lot of money. There's a lot of reasons why this happened. There's a lot of finger pointing between the studios and the cable stations. Each one says it's your fault. But we have been changing the habits of movie goers for a very long time now. The pandemic just accelerated it. So I guess it remains to be seen whether people will go back to the movie theaters once their habits have been changed. We'll see.
Maybe for the big blockbusters, for the James Bonds, for the Marvels, but
right. But we're ready for that. I mean, as performers, we certainly know, we do it because we love it, and we do it because it means something to us. And I don't know about you, but I'd do it on a little iPhone. I'm okay with that. And the home movie experiences has its advantages too.
What is going to tempt you to direct next, Jodie?
Well, I'm working on a bunch of things. You never know which one is going to be the one that goes. Because I make personal films, it's always dicey to see whether they're going to actually get made. But I'm working on a few things. And I have a feeling that it'll probably be on cable rather than on a feature.
Okay. You've said in the past that you always learn something from the directors that you have worked with. Mm-hmm. I wondered what you might have learned from working with Kevin McDonald on this movie.
Well, his kind of documentary spirit is really amazing. He is interested in everything and everyone and everyone's point of view. He's loves facts. He loves investigating. He loves, doing interviews, nonstop research. Everything is grounded in fact with him, which I love. But he also has a sense of cinema. So he's somebody who really has been able to figure out how to combine both of those things. And that's definitely something that I learned from him, but the combination of those two things about how to take things that are entirely fact-driven and that feel like they're happening in the moment, they're very much grounded in reality, and still give them the kind of spin of emotion in cinema that we all love.
Jodie Foster, a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.